All right, we've done it. We're live. The conclusion of ESL Pro League Season 21 here in Stockholm, Sweden. Vitality are your champions. Rops is your DHL MVP. Zyru is your HLTV MVP. Oh, I was telling Yeko this in the shuttle. Actually, no, never mind. We'll save that for another day.
All right.
Okay. This is the speeds on the Wi-Fi.
It's pretty good.
I tried to upload on the Wi-Fi on the first podcast we did, and it was going to take a while.
It's not going to be too long. I want, first and foremost, the viewers out there to appreciate this taking place. You two guys have had a couple of long days, a little bit under the weather at times. It would be much easier to just, chill out, take it easy, get ready for the plane. But thumbs up, guys. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Well, you guys have early flights.
You can't talk about that Hall conversation, and I probably can't talk about this one either from yesterday, but I'm going to regardless. It was maybe the strangest conversation I've been a part of in a long time, and it started by me asking Harry, if you could be an animal, what would you be, right? And Harry said penguins. A penguin. He wouldn't be multiple animals. He would be one penguin. I feel like that makes sense. And then after a little bit, he was like, wait, actually, no. Fuck that. Aren't penguins the ones that get harassed by sea otters?
Does he mean seals?
I won't necessarily use the... Yeah, I won't necessarily
It's more
use
the harassed.
The verbiage that was being used, right? And then I was like, excuse me? And you're right. And I had no idea about that whole conversation. But then Donna chimes in. Right, and he's like, oh, yeah, it happens, and everything. And it was just like the most ridiculous conversation where it's like, no, it's these guys doing it to these other ones. And it's like, wait, what are we talking about? Like
penguins.
And this was like the last 5 minutes of the drive. And I'm like, this is just crazy. I can't believe and it's a full shot. Like everyone's, chiming in, giving their thoughts. But yeah, it was a long day yesterday. I don't remember.
Where did he... yesterday was short.
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
Yesterday was No, wait.
It wasn't terrible.
No. Yesterday went 3 maps in the second series.
I don't think it was short, but
yeah.
it wasn't crazy long, I don't think.
And the first series also went 3 maps, right? Because on map number 1, Spirit brought it back after getting owned on the first half of Nuke. And then they won Dust 2, and then it went to the third and decider of Ancient, where they couldn't really get it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the day before was quick, right? Thursday was a longer one. Friday was a quicker one. Saturday was a longer one. And today was lightning fast.
As quick as you want.
The quickest game in history.
It was less than 3 hours. And that includes probably 40 minutes of between map, halftime, 45 to 50 minutes of halftimes, breaks.
The game went live at 5.
Yeah, and it ended around 8.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's nuts.
So they've really speed run that one. It's tough because, you got to call a spade a spade. It was boring, right? It was boring because there was really no pushback. There's a little bit on Dust 2, but otherwise Vitality absolutely stomped them. And when you talk about this, it's hard because fans of certain teams, when you hear you say their win's boring, they were dominant. They owned them.
They should like that, though.
Exactly. They played very well, right? But in terms of an entertaining game of Counter-Strike, which from our perspective as the people on the broadcast, you want an entertaining game. You want a back and forth. You want up and down. You want the roller coaster. You want the clutches. We had clutches that just were all going one way.
Yeah. I mean, Apex even mentioned that in his post-game on Nuke, especially. They played those post-plans so good, though. So, some of them were just played really well.
But Mouse played some of them really bad.
Yeah, probably a combination of both. I think Mouse, got scared, really early on Dust 2 as players. They just did not seem... all that confidence that I'd been seeing throughout this event from them, it was non-existent. I actually, during the third map, during Inferno, I was out laughing to myself because I'm I don't
crazy.
know, a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, Yeko, I have this Lord of the Rings comparison for you. That was the fucking final charge at Pelennor Fields to take back Minas Tirith. Watching them come up B lane short on Inferno and just watching the defenders back off. Just like the fucking orcs, right? That big charge happened, the Rohirrim came in, and those orcs all fucking shied away. And that's how I felt like I was watching Jimmy backing up into different angles, not wanting the initial fight. Everyone was just trying to back away from stopping Vitality from doing anything. And that's my Lord of the Rings comparison.
I hope people at home got that.
I got it. I always appreciate the charge of the Rohirrim.
Lord of the Rings, one of the movie series of all time, that's for sure.
I mean, it's again one of those things where also Vitality, they would lose the pistol, win the second round, right? It happened both times on Inferno, happened once on Dust 2, right? So it's
and
just...
they won both on Nuke. They run both pistols.
Yeah, so for Mongolz, it's always like a bad start and not really being able to get going. Also, I mean, let's start with us too. Just B-side getting absolutely bullied.
Jimmy was 0-6.
Jimmy was 0-6. Pinks wasn't doing much either. Like, they would just both die. They wouldn't even get a single kill and the site would fall. So, and Zyvo was even, he was not having
missing
a good...
orb shot.
On Dust 2, he was not having a good game, like, for his standards, right? And they still made it look easy.
Yeah. But that's what happens when there's more depth on the team, right? So like Zywu short, but it's not the Zywu show anymore. You've got Rops, who is an active lurk. He's making a lot of plays because he clearly likes being in this team, right?
Yep.
And then you've got Flamesy, who's a great soldier. I think, what did I call him? Chaotic good. Like, his personality is that, and the way that he approaches the game is that. He's like a good soldier for the unit. Like, he's going to go in, but he likes to do that. He likes to go aggressive. Apex coming into this was top 3 in terms of CT rated players from the event so far. That tells you something, right? And there was other stuff. If you look at HLTV's like FTU stats, right, in terms of opening kills, multi-kills, 5v4, 4v5, ADR, trading, and flash assist, Vitality were top 3 in every category.
Yeah.
I mean, this event just showcased that they're like steps ahead literally every other team. Like, it is like S tier is Vitality, and then everyone else is A and below.
I'd agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit later. I want to wrap the final up first. Couple of interesting things as well. Mezzi was the highest rated player in the final for Vitality. Mezzi had the lowest amount of kills for Vitality with 42. The highest were Rops and Apex with 45.
Wow,
like,
so a good team effort.
Mental. It's only 3 kills between them. Just tells you like it's been everyone, having part in the win as well. But yeah, I don't know. Just it's so crazy when you're watching them play, and then there is a couple of opportunities here and there for Mongolz, but then obviously on Dust 2, once Vitality goes out long, that one round Apex is sort of faking it, like they're taking long, and the rest of the team is outside B, and Mongolz over rotates because they've been hitting B all the time. Now they have a long spawn, they want to take advantage of it. They get into an empty bomb site. It's sort of, they just ran circles around.
They destroyed him. It wasn't even close.
No.
Like it's a dominant best of 5, which is why when you have a best of 5 like that, it's like, well, why are we doing a best of 5? This could have just been a best of 3. It could have been over and done with. Reverse sweeps very rarely happen. Maus weren't even really putting up that much of a fight. When you go to like a map like Nuke, and then Zai was in that 1v3, and Exertion gets caught with a knife in his hand, and it felt like he was a deer in headlights. It even looked like it took him a long time to pull his rifle out in that situation too. There was nothing going their way. They were playing situations poorly. But this is the thing. I'm going to sound like a hater, but I don't rate Mongolz. Like, I just don't rate Mongolz. Like, I know they won Cluj, and I know they made it to the grand final here, but like, there's something about them that, for some reason, I just don't rate.
Is it beyond waiting to see more time with Brolin at the helm?
I didn't rate them before.
Okay.
Like, when everybody was on the whole Mongolz NXT Academy roster, we play Academy, jacking them off, I'm like, can we wait until these guys do something? And they do something now. Like, don't get me wrong. I like watching Torji. I think Exertion's a really good map control player. Like, they have good parts, but there's one team at the moment that is complete, and that team is Vitality. You see it on the CT side, you see it on the T side. They have a really good variety of calls. They have, I think, role for role, like with the players in them. It doesn't feel like there's role overlap. Doesn't feel like anybody's getting in each other's way. It feels like everybody knows what to do. On the CT side, they're making, I mentioned this in the cast, it's either a read or a gamble. We don't know. But either way, they pick right a lot of the time with their stacks. And those things are really strong. And then you look at the rest of the field, you look at Spirit, okay, so when Donk's playing well, when he had a bad start on Nuke and then still ended up being the highest rated player in that series that they lost against Mongolz, you're like, this kid's always going to bounce back.
Bro,
Nothing's going
that
to stop him.
photo was so funny after they lost.
Yeah, what was that about?
Everyone consoling him, sort of like, please.
Wasn't it like repenting? Sorry, Donk, we couldn't help you.
Exactly. Sorry, we failed you, our liege.
Be kind, Donk, be kind. Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm probably being too harsh on Mongolz, but it's something like, I don't know. I
feel you haven't clicked with them yet.
No, I feel you. I was going to say, like, I want to feel that way too, but I just can't anymore, right? Because you can't deny some of the results. They've just been really consistent, and I think that's because of the structure that they have and the work that they put in. The coach with the different team game leaders and the staff. The assistant coach, performance, everyone, right? And so Cyclone was actually talking about it. Don asked him about it in the interview, and he was saying it's just the culture that we have, and the players buy into that. And I think that's really powerful and can take you a long way, but not all the way, right? And I was the same. It's like, yeah, but it's Cluj. The best team they beat is the Falcons, right? And now they beat Spirit. And
It's a
they
big
also
win. It is a
and
big
they also
win.
beat G2. So you can't be like,
Yeah.
okay, but I want you to be Spirit in, an arena. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, but not all tournaments have an arena, right? And these tournaments still count. So yes, there's definitely, that's what I said on the couch is Mongolz is right there, but this last step that they have left to take is a pretty big fucking
Yeah,
step.
I'm not calling them I'm not calling them studio merchants, or I'm not like any of those angles there. Maybe it's just because the rest of the field overall, like, yeah, Vitality are the clear number one right now, and this is like a mid-season check-in point. Below them, you have, I think it's still Spirit. The concerning one for me is NaVi. You said that you think they're like officially in crisis, I think was like the terms that you used.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, everybody, like, I like the Counter-Strike that Mongolz and EF play. I think it's some of the best Counter-Strike, right, across in terms of like the strats they have or the players they have, the way that they play together as a team. But for them, it's the lack of experience. So those two, I think, will get better with time unless they crack, right? But the others, G2 looks like a fucking mess.
Oh, they look like a train wreck.
Bro, was I fucking wrong about G2 at the start of the season, right? I said something along the lines of, I think they'll make most of the playoffs, but they won't win a single tournament. Well, I mean, they did make playoffs here. They didn't in Kato, but their floor is nowhere near as high as I thought it was going to be with this team.
They haven't installed the floor yet. They're still waiting for that to get shipped
They're
in.
waiting for it. It's hard to find a handyman.
It's like a classic case of you never know what you're missing until it's gone.
Well, yeah, but obviously with Nico, you knew what you were going to be missing. Surely you knew what you were going to be missing.
I don't, not to this extent.
Well, come on.
No,
now.
I think they
You knew you'd. I think you knew you'd be missing a lot.
Well, you might be missing Monacy
But
soon
I
too,
think
so you'd be missing an awful lot.
I think in terms of like how the team just looks like kind of like lost on the maps is shocking to me personally.
Funnel all the resources into Ilya. Let's go. Just try and power him up like the spirit bomb from Dragon Ball Z. Just everybody put your hands up,
They kind
dropping
of have
guns
to at
every
this
round.
point. They have to at this point.
No, but I think they knew what they were going to miss. It's just making up for it is still hard because... Go ahead.
I bet what they thought was that with seeing how good Mongolz played when Nico was on the team, I think they thought that was going to be a little bit of a smoother transition, like they would be getting more from him at this point.
Possibly, but that's the thing. Like, having that part of his game that Nico has, that some other players have too, that are, secondary callers and second voices, not every good player has that or necessarily develops that. Some guys are just really good in their role, and that guy can also be the yard player, the rotation player and stuff without calling as much on the map, but still do his job really well.
Or the leader can tell him, hey, I want you to play red pole this round, or I want you to go yard control this round, right?
So I think that's like something that Mongolz will obviously try to develop and want, but whether he does that or not, only time will tell. Even a player like Nico, it took him years too to get to that point. You go back to... So how do you compare it? Like, is Malbs now Nico joining Mouse or Nico joining Faze, right?
Sure.
But because Nico joining Mouse was just a
Learning
bit of a turret, like he was just
Yeah.
mechanically insane and was just owning people. This part of reading the game a lot better and especially controlling other guys came like years later, right? So...
But I don't know whether I spoke about it on this or if I spoke about it on Hatred TV Confirmed, but
fine.
One of the two, I do a lot of podcasts. One of the two was the angle of G2, you have two choices, right? You either can keep Snacks as the in-game leader, which is going to be the game by committee. Does Ilya have a good spawn? Does he have a play he wants to make? Are you going to allow Malbs to learn, like Yanko's saying? Is Hunter going to try and step in and have more control? Or do you then make the change that everybody wants to see over there at G2, which is Shui come in, and then he implements more of a structure, and you take away that responsibility, and then Shui's the one moving those pieces around the board? That was the choice that I think that they had to make early. And right now, this is a question I have for the room. Which teams at the moment, because we still have a decent chunk of time until the major, they're not going to lose many, like the ranking points are pretty much locked. Lisbon, as soon as Lisbon is done, you can make roster changes after Lisbon because you know what stage you're going to be at the major. So after Lisbon is done, April 7, we know who's going to be in the major, who's going to be where. Do you risk making roster changes knowing you have, a 2-month runway if you make one piece of a change to revitalize you for the major? Because some of the teams are not going to be able to build back up.
I think most teams should be willing to take that risk, considering how they've looked. There's been a lot of disappointing...
Well, this was event 4,
Yeah.
but not for all of them, because a bunch of them skipped.
Right. Yeah. I
And
think
Faze keep this one.
I think, but it's also, it's not just that. It's also like what's available, like what's available to pull the trigger on. But I think there should be teams willing to take that risk for sure. And I think G2 should probably be one of them. But my only problem with that is, well, maybe not problem, but I think if you bring Shue in for snacks, you have to let Taz go as well, right? Like that's sort of you don't have to.
You don't have to. Why would
you? Don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yes, but
it feels like that would be a big signal of a lack of confidence.
Are you thinking
in the
this
guy
is
that
an
he
Art
brought in.
Gary situation?
I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it has to be. But maybe, right?
Yeah.
Like depending on what if you get Shue and then maybe you go for Ash because they have
Then
the
you gotta spend
relationship
some money.
from Gamer Legion. Yeah, but you will get money if you sell Monesi in the half of the season instead of waiting the full year and then he walks for free, right? I think for G2 that's the problem. I think unlike last season, like. I can't really say with confidence that the G2 players believe that this team, could
win,
become the
yeah.
best, right? I think they know that they can win, but a lot of things can have to go their way, right? But I think the confidence in the squad is lower than it was last season, right? And now you look at how Vitality is playing and they've added Rops, like that just becomes even more difficult. And all of that leads to, why would Monesi stay on this team, right? If he can go even to Falcons and reunite with Nico or maybe somewhere else, although I don't see where else he could realistically go. So if you're G2, just long term, just get Shue, right? So, I don't think I rated him as highly as other people, but he's still a better option than Snacks, right? Like if anything, he's much younger.
He has a lot to prove still.
And then I think you have really good players on that team. I think Malbs will be a really good player. I think he is a really good player.
Yeah.
I think right now Malbs is, I feel like putting too much pressure on himself to fill Nico's shoes. And like he sees that he's not doing the same things that Nico was doing in those roles. Not in terms of output and fragging, but controlling things, right? But you can't put that pressure on yourself. Just play the game like the way you're kind of used to playing it and let other things sort of slowly work out, right? You have Heavy God, who I think is a great also addition in that role. You have Hunter, who with a little bit more maybe freedom could find some of his groove back, right? Then what you're missing is obviously going to end up missing Monesi, who's irreplaceable, same as Nico. That's why we talked, Chad, a year ago, how whatever you do, you keep these two guys, somehow, but whatever. And then you need to find an opper. I don't think, probably in case you bring Shue, Torji would be awesome because they play together, but he's, even for more money in terms of salary, I don't see him leaving Mouse for G2, right? No. So then you would have to see at the time what your options are, what you could do, and sort of have a much different type of a team than you did only a year ago.
Yeah, so the G2 option is one that seems a little bit like, I don't want to say clearer, but it's one where you can see what type of change they could make and potentially where it would fix some of these issues that we're talking about. But NaVi, returning to them, you saying they're in crisis, how do you fix that? That's a system-based team.
Yeah, that's one angle. My angle was going to be
players aren't shooting, Jason.
I was going to say they're the only team really without like a big star player at the moment, which is basically just what is reworded exactly what you said. I don't know how you fix it. I think you need a little bit more firepower. I mean, I don't know. This is why. So I always bring up the Mouse thing as like the existential Counter-Strike and all the conversations the players have, because it's like consistent Counter-Strike still work at the moment. It seems like every team is leaning towards firepower.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So, I barely do any stuff like this, so I'll do them right now. I think this is the peak of this Mouse roster now. I think they will likely stay around this level, if not drop off.
Stagnate a little bit, yeah.
I don't see them making a jump. I don't know where that jump would come from.
Consistent performance. I don't know. I guess more consistency out of exertion, but that's...
Yeah, he played great in Cluj final, right?
Yeah. He played really well.
But he didn't play like that in this final, and okay, it's a tougher opponent in different circumstances, but that's what you need to do if you want to win a tournament like this. And what?
They weren't in this game at all.
Yeah, exactly. So they need to figure out also for their players individually how to get them to have good output more consistently. And listen, I'm not even talking about just stats. Like your stats are obviously always going to be worse if you play more eco rounds and you're playing from behind, right? Like they're always going to take a hit. But even in some, just when it is gun versus gun round and some rounds where you do have opportunities, I think Nuke T-side is the best example of that. They had plenty of opportunities to probably even win that half.
Yeah.
But round after round after round, shit gets fucked up, right? There's some lapses in communication, surely, because that's the only thing that can explain how you lose some of these rounds, and unfortunately, from my experience, there's also an element of fear factor going up against the team. I mean, I know even for, let's say, maybe the Faze team in 2019, when you will go up against Astralis, like, it's just tough. Like, they're just owning everyone. And, you have guys... I have guys on my team who believe that they can win and that they're better than those players, but you just know they're very strong as a unit, right? And once things start, or they win a round or two by doing their thing for Astralis, it was like they would block you at the perfect time, and that would cause you to lose the round.
Or you need like 200 damage in nades.
Yeah, you just see like the mood change a little, like your entries, your space taker, like Nico and Rain, like are at 20 and 30 HP on Dust 2 because they ate the nades at Cat, and it chips away at the mental of the players and your team, right? And that's just what great teams have going for them. For Faze, it's winning the bullshit rounds. For other teams, it's, it can always be different things, but you're also battling the psychological, not just the players on the server, right? I think I talked about it in maybe the Mongolz Vitality game, where it's, it's because you're playing Vitality that you've made this move that's a little bit uncharacteristic for your,
Sure.
because you're stressing, you're thinking like they could be everywhere, right?
Yes.
Obviously, they don't have 7 players on the map and they can't be 3 outside
feels
B
like
and
they
4
do.
outside A. But that's how you're tripping, because they're good, and like you think they can't make a mistake, and they're like always, they know like that you stack this bomb site, they're gonna go to the other side, when that's not the reality. They're human too, and they can make mistakes and they can fuck up, and you can definitely shoot them as hard as they can shoot you. But getting over that glass ceiling a little bit can be tough.
I think that mental for Mal's got knocked tonight in that Dust 2 round that you already talked about, the Apex long and going back to the B-bomb site. I think that ruined it, because like it wasn't just like the fake that pulled everyone over. It's also, I think it was Exertion that was pushed up like
Spinks.
top mid, Spinks pushed all the way up to barrels, and it's like at that moment they probably had to feel like they were in such control.
Yeah, they're locked
They felt
in
like they
long.
knew everything. 4 players at the site, they can't get out cave. The Mouse had to feel like they had that round won like a million times
Oh my
over.
god, dude, was that the round where Spinks was like, after that he just
He flanked.
pushed
So late
and
on
he
the
didn't
low.
do
Yeah, yeah.
anything. He was just like
So
playing
late.
so slow,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He, in the end, he ended up saving in tunnels.
But that's Vitality Spinks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I tweeted out. Spinks is the Shiro of lurkers.
It's either a good thing or a bad thing. It depends
good
on
tweet.
what you think about Shiro, I suppose.
One of my better ones.
What about I don't think the Mongols have to make a change. Well, obviously, and anyway, that's only locally within their scene. I think they're making steps, just baby steps.
Yeah.
I think for them, it's just they need to get better on Dust and Nuke.
So you think their map pool is a bit shallow?
Yeah. Or maybe Dust and Inferno. Maybe their Nuke isn't as...
But they took Nuke off Vitality.
Yeah, they did, and it was also a little bit of Vitality, but Ancient and Mirage are their probably 2 best maps. Then you'd probably say Anubis. But Dust 2 has been pretty weak, although they did beat...
They had some comebacks. G2?
Someone on Dust.
G2. There's a
with
massive comeback.
Right, they beat NaVi on Mirage. But I think that's that for them. For Eternal Fire, maybe a little bit different things. I don't know. Sometimes...
But it's also a map pool for them too, because they were really, not reliant, but Anubis was their trump card every time. And then they started to get a bit more figured out on that map. So then they started to lean into Train a little bit more, which I think is good. I think, if you can have Anubis and Train, you're
their
in a pretty
Nuke
good
is
spot.
good as well.
Yeah.
It feels like at this point. Like
Their Dust 2 is weak too.
People punish
wasn't it?
their Mirage a lot at the moment.
I think their biggest issue heading into the major is going to be the schedule that they're on.
They're at every event.
They're at every single event, and most of them are like 2 to 3 days off in between. So if they feel like they haven't had enough time to practice now, what are you going to feel like in fucking May?
And they did. This is the thing. When they were talking about being away from home and going deep in every event and not having time, it's like, okay, yeah, but that only matters up until end of Lisbon, and then after that you can be more selective with your events because if you're locked in for the major or not. But they fucking decided to do everything.
I know.
It's crazy.
And it's like, I can even have sympathy with that perspective of not being home, not having enough time to practice and prep. But once you accept an invite to every single event, it's like, well, you've made this decision.
They're also doing the Dallas Kazakhstan thing. Like, how the fuck are you going to pull that off?
I don't even know. They're going to have to pull out one of those, surely.
How do you do that?
But I think if you're a team,
There's a way. I'll tell you that physically, you can make both.
Well, I can't.
Well, I can.
Oh.
Ooh, there we go.
But no, I think, remember 2016, 2017 and the Brazilians, right? SK/Luminosity. They would also play everything. Like they had that approach that they would, it was a little bit different, that they would play some smaller tournaments sort of to warm up and to practice in an official capacity, right? And get those games under their belt without necessarily caring about whether they would end up winning the event or not. Here it's a little bit different because these tournaments are big and they're important and they have a lot of prize money and the VRS aspect of it as well. But, if you can put yourself into that mindset where, okay, we're playing these 4 tournaments in a row or 3 tournaments, but this is the main focus, right? And these other 2, I'm not saying they're taking it as practice, but it's like you're focusing a little bit more. You're trying to peak at this tournament, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a way, because players talk. When you talk to players, like they always say, practice is like, okay, you practice, but it's not until the games that you really see what's working, what's not happening. So if anything, they'll have the most data and the biggest sample size, from any team. And it's going to be something crazy once we get to the major, the amount of like LAN officials they've played in this year. But how many scenarios have those players then been in, through all these different maps, retakes, situations, 4v3s, 3v4s, no nades, a lot of nades, no time, little time, right? Like now you're sort of a lot more exercised into what's going on.
Yeah, but they're going to be so burnt out.
Well, no, because if they get to stage 3 of the major, which right now, if we took a snapshot of right now,
2 weeks off.
Between Dallas and stage 3, they'll have 2 weeks, right? Which is enough time to focus and ramp up.
They shouldn't have played Dallas though.
No, they shouldn't.
Right? Because you get extra week or more, and they'll have to go to US and then go back, or potentially stay if a lot of teams are staying.
And then have worse practice.
Like people did during China.
Yeah.
Well, if a lot of teams stay.
Well, your stage 1 teams are going to be your worst teams. You're going to have the 5 Asian teams.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the 4 Asian.
Yeah, but maybe stage 2 teams will also stay in the US after
5
Dallas. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Might be a possibility. I still just think like you're going to want to use those 2 weeks to prep for the major. I think they're just going to be fried of just pure Counter-Strike for that long. Maybe I'm wrong,
and
though.
The travel.
I just think the way they lost and got eliminated here was that nuke game where they lost all those. Yeah, but they lost so many dumb posts. They lost 2 5v3s, a 3v1, and a 10-second diffuse stuck in their face.
That's right.
And I think if you lose those kinds of rounds, that shows to me that you're losing focus in those post plants, in those situations, in terms of communicating your positioning, in terms of communicating what you're watching, in terms of communicating what's happening and what's going to happen. And I think that issue surely only gets worse if you're going to every single event.
Well, they're on the cusp, right? They're on the cusp of the breakthrough, which is the same as the Mongolz, which is why I think like Yanko's side of things of play all the events, getting in all the reps. For me, it's less about the reps. It's more about the experience against the best teams. I think that's what Mongolz and EF are lacking in those games, maybe more nervy, maybe making more poor decisions. If they're more comfortable being like, we actually deserve to be here. This doesn't feel new. This doesn't feel like, oh shit, we made another playoff. It's like, no, we're a playoff team. Now it's about breaking through that barrier and then being more comfortable in those environments. Because Mongolz are the youngest team, right? They're 20.5 in age.
Yeah,
You've got Mizinho, who's still quite young. Senzu's quite young. And if they can just make sure that their mental doesn't tank from some of the losses they're having and they understand how they need to, okay, what did we learn from this one? What do we learn from the next one? I think those 2 teams are in a good position to take steps in the lead to the major as long as they can get to the playoffs of things like Lisbon, right? Or the playoffs of Melbourne or Dallas and get stage games where we're not talking 10,000 people like the major. We're talking 4,000 to 6,000 people. I'm guessing. I don't know what Lisbon's capacity is. I don't know what Melbourne's capacity. I don't know what Dallas' capacity. But just getting those reps in where you're in that environment, so that once you get to the major, you know what you're tussling with. And they're 2 of my favorite teams to watch right now because I like what a lot of the players in the team can offer.
Yeah, I think also because they played each other in Cat, you could see there's that Eternal Fire choked, right, in that game. And Mongolz against Maus at the major and maybe a little bit in Cluj. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I would say that for my money, Mongols play a little bit better CS potentially as a team.
Okay.
Like Eternal Fire sometimes maybe a little bit easier to read and to play against. They like to group up potentially a little bit more. But still, yeah, two of the teams that are up and coming from, not your usual suspects and usual names. And also they get the benefit from the high seed, right? The Mongols especially, in terms of their initial matchups and... they don't need to play the best teams until the 2-0 game and until the playoffs, even perhaps. So that helps a lot, and that's a problem for the Asian team, Team Liquid.
Yes, everyone's that today. In case people missed it, obviously it started to come out about Liquid being offered the Blast Rivals wildcard spot for Asia. So Blast Rivals is the top 4 by VRS if they accept. So that's 1 to 4, and then there's 4 more wildcard spots: 1 for South America, 1 for North America, 1 for Asia, and 1 for Europe. And because Liquid are classified as an Asian team and a North American team, well, Blast have invited Liquid, which makes sense. I would do, if I was Blast, if I put myself in their business's decision, I would do the same thing. And that categorization is not Blast's choice, it's not Liquid's choice, it's Valve's rules that make that there. My biggest problem with all of this is not the fact that they're half American or half Asian. That's fine. JKS is Australian, Nerds is Israeli. That's how that works. You got NAF, you've got Twist, they're Canadian. That's how that works. My problem is the fact that Valve even gave Blast the
exception.
Approval?
Exception.
Yes, to have this format. This format is a bad format. Like, it's 8 teams and 4 of the teams are wildcard. And if you were going to run wildcard events like this, you needed to have run 3 tier 1 events. Well, they wouldn't have done that. They'll have only run Bounty and they'll have only run
Lisbon Open.
Exactly. So, and Valve gave them this exception. And then you can clearly see that Valve don't like what is going on here. They set the new VRS rule for wildcard invites to be from the global ranking. You have to be outside of the top 12.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't.
Which actually Liquid is.
They're 12 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can't stack the deck in the way that like Blast were hoping to with this Rivals event. I just hate the idea that that's like the format.
It's a good point about Valve. I mean, I know they did say there was going to be a period of leniency while things got instituted, so maybe they had a little bit of grace to give Blast in this. I'm with you, though. I'm not a huge fan
but
of it.
But they
either.
also implemented the 20-team invite thing, Jason, so they're not happy with what the TOs are implemented as formats.
Yeah. Well, they're not happy the TOs are finding those like loopholes within the rules they have, right?
Well, now that when you look at it with the 20-team invite for each event, what these TOs are probably going to do is they're not going to bring more teams to LAN. Why would you? That just costs more money.
Yep.
You just run online qualifiers, right? And you would have, like, let's say you'd invite 14 teams directly to the LAN, the 1 to 14, and then the 15th to 20th, you'd invite them to an online portion, and you can expand that. You could make it 15th to, I don't know, 24th, for example, if you wanted it to be 8 teams. Or you could, you can do that however you want, but you're not going to run that on LAN. Why would you add more costs? Like, that isn't stipulated. That's not made to happen. So, like, TOs are just going to do that. They're not going to run more robust events, but it means that more teams get an opportunity to try and compete for those VRS points. So at least you get a bigger field. But they're still tweaking stuff, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, surely, like, you can patch this kind of a situation by saying, like, regional wildcard invites have to have 3 players from the region, right? Like, that would be, like, an easy fix.
What's the point of the wildcard, right? So the way that it's trying to be used in this situation is so that Blast can have as many big-name teams at their event. So I'm going to assume what they've done is they've invited, from South America, they've invited Furia, because your only other choice out, because Mongolz are top 3.
Right.
So Mongolz are going to get invited as one of the top 4 teams to Rivals. So then the next one falls to Liquid at number 2, but it's not, don't have to be by order. But other than Liquid, who's going to bring viewership? Well, you don't want to bring another Mongolian team. You could bring a Chinese team, but it's in Mexico. And you could bring FlyQuest, but they're not going to have a big viewer base. They're Australian. So you go, well, of course we're going to take Liquid. And then that means that opens up your North American spot, and then you can pick your poison. Well, let's go Wildcard. They're pretty good. People seem to be interested in them. Amaranth is going to co-stream. We're going to get some viewership for that. Like, you
think that's going to be at the team, not M80?
I think it'll be Wildcard.
Yeah, I think it is already known to be wildcarding.
Interesting.
Right, and then you think for Europe, well, they're probably going to invite NaVi, because NaVi are the team who are outside of the top 4 in the VRS who have the biggest viewership base, I would say.
Yeah.
You're either NaVi or a G2, but I think NaVi is probably the best
Well,
bet.
G2 probably would say no. because of all the travel, because they're the ones that are avoiding, or maybe, actually, I don't know. They're not going to be in Melbourne, I don't think.
No,
G2.
they're doing Dallas, though, I'm pretty sure.
But I mean, also the silliness too of like being outraged at Liquid for accepting the invite was a little bit much. Like,
yeah, the way that it was framed,
the
discourse on the internet just shows me that the people aren't listening when the VRS conversation is going on. They don't understand.
Not
they're
reading the details,
blaming Valve, and it's like, okay, guys, we know there's going to be teething issues early, but the reason that it's like this, there's a good reason for it, right? Like, and they're also taking the decision-making power away from the team. It's like, well, if you have this split, right, you are going to exist in both, and then when the invites come out for the major, it's going to work like this. It just means that they can't like game the system. They've been told this is the system, and you are in the system. I'm sure Liquid would love to go, no, we'd prefer to be North American. Like, they always love being North American, don't they, Jason? You're the biggest advocate for that.
Hell yeah, they absolutely would love it. Well, that's also, I mean, that's why part of the reason why I was thinking it's like insane for people to be upset that they accepted an invite. And obviously, if you look into it, you probably wouldn't be upset. But let's say you were. Like for Liquid, it's like, well, how would they pass up on an opportunity to get extra points to go deeper in the major and potentially get more sticker money?
That's for the next major. So the next major at that point.
Oh, that's right. God damn.
But it's more about the frequent flyer thing as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you collect tokens for that, if you end up being one of the top teams with tokens, I think I've like ballparked it at about 300K for the year, right? And that's good. There's a lot of factors that play into that.
That's more than Vitality got from winning Pro League in prize money plus the club reward.
Did you see the ESL put out the revenue page? Yeah. So that's going to be, then it's from 1 to 16 or whatever.
A lot of money.
It is.
But it's right now a lot of teams share a spot because
it'll
they
move
have
a lot.
It will change a lot by the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, that's also a couple 100,000 for teams that are at the very top. Yeah,
so there's some, like, it's interesting to see how these incentive structures are going to unfold. There was also something else with the Rivals event where it was like 1 to 8 is the VRS allocation, and we were reading it, and it's like the appearance fee for that event, or it's the merit-based appearance fee, but everybody from 1 to 8 get the same appearance fee. It was like 80K. But I think the way we read it was, if you're not 1 to 8 in terms of the way that you're invited, like let's say that you're Liquid and you're 12th at the point of being invited, you don't count for the 80K appearance fee, and that appearance fee goes in the frequent flyer pot. Well, you're not actually the 8th team by VRS.
Okay.
You're the 12th team by VRS.
Okay, but the 8th team said no, or like, some... Or...
Well, no, they couldn't have, because it's 4-team
so that's only for Rivals.
Yes. Well, yes, because the others... Well, I don't know. The way we were going to check was we were going to ask Namiga, who were like a team brought in, but they weren't 1 to 32 of Bounty. They were outside of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Striker ended up checking. But yeah, there's some little things here which would be important to check. And I'm pretty sure anyway, Blast in the future are going to change their incentive structure. It would be pointless for them to run these like merit-based appearance fee based on where you're invited. They should just do a club share, because it hurts. That appearance fee doesn't go to VRS, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter as much to the teams as the club reward does, which now both PGL and ESL have.
Yes, so I imagine Blast in the future will look at changing the way that they structure their incentives to be more in line with what PGL and ESL are doing. That would make the most sense, because especially come 2027, when Blast and PGL have overlapping events, like literally like on top of each other, the same dates, there's going to have to be something done from Blast to try and combat that, because I think
PGL's prize pool,
PGL will have more LAN games and will have a bigger prize pool. So you have to do something about that, otherwise you're going to get fucking wrecked.
But who could realistically challenge Vitality though now?
Oh,
now we can have the conversation.
So is Spirit like fucked? Like that's because I don't think Spirit are fucked.
See, what you said about Mouse, I kind of felt that way a little bit about Spirit, right? It's not that I don't rate them. It's like I just have a hard time putting them as really the best. And of course, they win the major, and there's no taking anything away from them. And they have the best player in the world. But it seems like outside of that, that's the problem for me. Like everything outside of Donk is where the issues lie, and where you feel like the gaps are compared to the other teams.
But I don't even know the other teams, just the Vitality, right?
I mean, specifically in this case, Vitality.
I think Spirit winning the major did like a little amnesia magic trick where we all forgot how much they were struggling leading into the major.
Yes.
Like they did not look good for months leading into the major whatsoever.
Okay, so I guess the question here becomes, what is the goal of Spirit? Now, we can't know for certain what it is, but is it just to go for the big trophies? Is it to, like, because Yanko's sitting here saying for, like, EF, for example, on that stretch of big events when they're going to Astana, when they're going to Dallas, to make sure that, you know, it's not just we need to win this, we need to win, and burning themselves out. It's understanding, all right, we still want to win our games, but we're focusing on this and we want to get to this point, but we don't need to win the whole thing. For Spirit, do you think that they're in a position where they're like trying to claw their way up to be at the top of the mountain and they can't get the grip? Or do you think they're just like, well, who cares? It's just EPL.
Based on last year, and you guys might have to tell me with the details, they're not coming to me right now, because Spirit strategically skipped some events last year throughout the year, right?
They didn't go to Rio.
They didn't go to Pro League first season, I don't think.
I didn't think they qualified though. That's why.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And did they play second one?
Pretty sure.
They won Katowice, though. Don't they get a direct invite to Pro League after that?
Yeah, because we did the skit with Donk.
All the invites already done.
We did the skit with Donk in Malta and stuff.
Shit. But I know they strategically skipped events, so that would tell me that they're trying to like organize their calendar so that they can be peaking at the right moment, so that they can be picking up momentum to aim for mostly the big events.
But they're skipping stuff now too. I mean, they won't be in Dallas, right?
They'll be in Melbourne. They'll be in Melbourne, but not
won't
Dallas.
Be in Dallas. They're going to Astana.
Yeah.
So, but here's also the thing. What you said, yes, I get it. But for Spirit, I don't think that's the case because of two things. They made 4 finals in a row, right? With Katowice.
World finals, right?
World finals, Major, Bounty, Katowice, right? 1-2 out of the 4. Then they skip Cluj. So they have a break where they can practice and reset, and they suffered from success a little bit. Let's put it that way. So after a break, and you're coming back, and you made 4 finals before that, you're not thinking like, oh yeah, we're ramping up. You're already ramped up, really, and you just needed to make some small tweaks. Teams have caught up with you, right? And you feel like you're going to be back in the saddle, back going for the win. At the very least, you shouldn't be losing to Mongolz, kind of. You know, but maybe Mongolz just feels... Maybe Mongolz is just not the best matchup for them. I don't know. So I think that's why for Spirit, honestly, you bring Kyosuke. Teams that make the change after Lisbon, they should be one of them. The kid's obviously extremely talented. And I don't care who they bring him in for.
We'll see the Zontics on Magic, right?
Yeah, like either of the two. And then you have people who say, but their roles and this and that. It's like, I don't care. You know, like, first of all, if he's such a great player, he can adapt. Second of all, the other guy who remains on the team outside of Zontics or Magics can adapt themselves, right? Like, in this era where everyone is talking about firepower and individual skill, you have a guy like that on your academy team, you promote him.
It'd be interesting to see if they'd go for a ballsy move like that, right? Like I think Chopper, on the day that he was meant to be sick as a dog, and Hallie was potentially standing in for him. Yeah. Chopper gets an ace on the pistol round of that game, right? Like Chopper can still have his moments. Obviously, Donk is Donk. He reset from that Nuke game. He even came back heavily in the second half, like mentioned before, highest rated player in that series still. Or was it for his team? But either way, he turned it around. Yep. Even though I know you have your gripes with the way that Shiro approaches the AWP, as far as AWPers go, Shiro's still one of the best.
I mean, the only change you'd ever make with Shiro is Monacy.
Yeah, and
like, you question whether it can even like sort of at that. You know, I was gonna say whether it even works with Donk on the team and such an aggressive rifler, but at that point you're sort of just like, fuck it. Like, just see. You know, we have.
How can I turn this down?
We have so much skill right now that. Surely we can figure out a way to make it work. You know?
Yeah, so then you're looking at a Magic Zontics, and look, the thing is, you'd be bringing in a kid who's completely untested at the highest of levels, but that's what Donk was when he was brought in.
Yep.
So, look, and that would, the only, like, we have no way of knowing this. Overdrive might. Well, like, yeah, he really might. Like, how do they feel like they're in crisis? Because that has to be a meeting of the minds. That has to be with Hallie with Chopper, or Hallie with the management, and has to sit there and say, hey, like, I don't think we have that gear to get us back with the way things are right now.
Right.
And we can't know that. Right, we can't know how they're feeling. Could have been like Magic's wasn't well either. Like, I'm not. Yeah, he had a stinker of a game, but you could see in his eyes were red and bloodshot and stuff. And like, I look. People can get sick. We've seen that at EPL with... there
was some shit going around this event.
Josh was sick. You were sick. Hugo was sick. Freya was sick. I'm old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Tons of players were sick throughout the event as well. Like, it was just going around.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, I think so. He was very sick.
Damn. Yeah, well, so I think, like... Spirit, if they could use that injection of life, and it could, like, you know, because a new player, what it does is it agitates in a good way. You know how like pearls are made? That's kind of like what adding a new player is, you know? Yeah, you bring that in.
I think the Kyosuke conversation was even, for me, in my mind, I thought they would have that conversation even after winning the major of like being like, do we need it? Like, not realistically.
After winning a major.
Absolutely it is.
Especially after Magix has 69 kills.
Yes, absolutely. But I think sneakily they had one of the best off seasons in terms of they actually made sure they re-signed him to the academy team and make sure he stayed in house
and made him say like, yeah, I need another season. Yeah, before they got
right. They kept him in house. So I mean that's a big win if they want to make a switch.
Also, Spirit won't be able to do that for much longer because you'll have some team from the outside just willing to take a chance on him, right, and buy him out and
VP or something.
Yeah, or maybe even I don't know how his English is.
Oh, I think he said he has decent English.
Yeah, so maybe even an international team. So that's also the thing for Spirit, right? They need to take that into account. And yeah, now it becomes, okay, are we good enough to beat Vitality? And sure, you believe you are. And I think that's why Lisbon will be huge for them, right? And I can get behind it with you guys and say that if they had a couple of guys really ill and, at that point also the vibe in the team is, you're obviously not feeling 100% and the confidence is down and you're sort of writing off the tournament in a way, right? You're doing your best under the circumstances, but the circumstances are extenuating in a way. So then it's Lisbon, right?
Yeah, that's how you dispel this conversation. Lisbon final versus Vitality competitive. That you don't have to win.
But Vitality won't care that much about Lisbon, though. All their eyes are now on an IEM and the major.
Yeah, the Grand Slam.
Right? So if we're talking about picking and choosing your fights, like
but Vitality are in the like we don't start the conversation now because we're sensible people. But right, a team that can be this dominant at the start of the year, if they carry this through, if they win the major, they won the last Cologne, they won the last Katowice. Like did they win the next Cologne as well?
Sure.
Do we start talking about that three-letter word?
You gonna do the E word?
We're not going to say it. Out there?
Yeah, I mean. For me, there's no doubt about it. Like, it's just consistency across a longer period of time. Which
they
is
don't
what
have to
it
win
is.
everything.
Yes, exactly.
But they just got to win consistently.
If NaVi was able to win for a little bit longer, could have said it would have been a short one. But also, that's why I'm saying, like we started talking about Spirit so much because we're talking about who could potentially challenge Vitality, right?
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to mention Faze next because
I thought Jason was going to say
That's
Liquid.
I was going to go for the underdog Faze.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I don't think anyone can. That's my point. But I was going to bring up Faze because we haven't seen them here, and they had like 5 days to just take off without playing and everything. But do we feel like they have what it takes?
If they've eaten some humble pie, and they understand that they need to make sure that they give Elige his good positions.
It's the most interesting conversation coming into Lisbon is what they're going to look like. Because I'm very curious. Because they've publicly said, I'm assuming they've taken this event off so they could have some time to.
It's so Elige can get his situated,
his
right?
Visa,
They've said that he's trying to go to Poland, trying to get that sorted. So
but let's say they've had 2 to 3 weeks where he's been doing some visa shit on the side, but
probably still pracking
and getting involved and having the conversations and swapping roles around and trying new things and changing things and. You give Kerrigan and Elige and that team time to cook for that long. Are they going to come out on the other side and look like they can challenge for trophies again? I'm really curious about that.
Well, okay, I'm just having a look right now.
I know, but it's also... are you ready to speak? Or are you still going through stuff?
They've played 30 maps with this roster this season.
Yeah.
So there's a decent amount of games played for them up to this point. I hope that they have started playing Train and they remove something else from their map pool.
Elige hated Train.
Don't give a fuck.
Just going to throw that out there.
0 fucks given if you hated Train. I think that they need to like grab something else that is a bit more of a, like Nuke, for example, which I never thought I'd ever say with Faze. But Elige can't find any impact on that map. They gave him outside.
Well, it seems like it felt like their setup was this weird thing where they moved Reigns sort of to a door. But Elige doesn't really go outside as much as he goes secret, and then Rain gets to be a little bit outside as well, right? It's like
it's not on meta, really, is it?
Yeah, exactly. They didn't go either way really with that. But for me, it's more of a question, regardless of the position swaps and the role swaps and everything. Like, do they have enough firepower to challenge Vitality? Like, can these players?
Elige and Frozen can shoot.
Yeah. What about Brokey and Rain?
Brokey's inconsistent.
Rain can, but
Rain
is he being thrown off by some role positioning changes?
Well, he also needs it to be a major to get his tier card. Otherwise, it's like, wow.
Which is fair play after this long.
Yeah, which I get, but he is an integral component. You're not winning with 2.5 players.
Yeah.
Right? So, and there's only so much Carrigan can do from a calling and entry perspective.
Yeah.
So if you're comparing Faze to Vitality or to Spirit, I don't think they have the firepower necessary.
That's why the Lisbon is big for them as well. Like, they need to make a dent in that tournament. Because if you now
only
look
16
at and
playoff.
say they've had 3 weeks
Yeah.
since their last tournament to practice and get things in order, right? And then they show up and let's say they don't make the playoffs. So what do you need to happen then?
Yeah.
And then there's very little left outside of a position changes if they haven't done them for Lisbon and a roster change.
Yeah.
Right? So
Can you give me that water by chance?
yeah.
Look, the Faze one, because they weren't here, it's a wait and see moment. The one that I am interested in, and obviously we need to talk about them because we love New Jersey, is Jason's favorite organization, Team Liquid.
Hey, don't try and just throw me under the bus. You started this year by saying we're on the same team now, or last year.
We're on a team of some variety.
And now all of a sudden it's my favorite
beat
team,
you.
and you've jumped out the back door.
Well, I'm like, I'm running alongside of the bus.
Okay.
I'm still kind of seeing
Keeping pace.
if it's one that I want a ticket for.
He's ready to jump on if
Yeah,
things start picking up.
If they can get across the line, Jason, they get some better results right now. Look, with Liquid, there's so you watch them in some of these games and you can see promise,
Yeah.
but it's like what's promise getting you?
You could see promise, and then you can also see whatever the opposite of promise is, lies.
Sadness.
But like there were some rounds,
Lies.
there were some rounds I was watching on Ancient when they played, when I would like watch Nerds would be like hyper aggressive in middle towards red room, and like the other 4 players would be like back at elbow and like B lane. And I'd be like, this feels like just like Yakinder, where there's just like one guy being very aggressive and not a whole lot of follow up behind it. And it wasn't every round, it wasn't with the same frequency. But when I see that, I'm just like, it scares me a little bit. I think positive signs. Ultimate had a good event. He had a bit of a return to some kind of positive form.
He was
after
really
some
good on the
struggles.
rifle, I thought.
Yeah,
He was having some good moments on the rifle.
I think the biggest concern right now is I think unfortunately, like, I still think they can be good, but I think if you want to get to a point where they can contend and become like a top 5 team, it's going to get to a point where you just have to change one of NaV or JKS. Like
It's a firepower problem again, right?
That those 2 players on one team are limiting how high they can go, for sure. I wouldn't even say it's causing like terrible problems. It's just limiting you from getting better, which I guess is a terrible problem in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is also, NaV had a poor tournament, but it's also NaV now plays upper on Nuke, right? And he's always been a ramp player. That suits him better, and he feels like he could do better there. So, how mad can you be when you force a guy to play out of position, on one side of things? And also, I know on the other side, JKS does that on some other maps, right? Like, has to play Cave on Ancient. And then it's also who has to be more aggressive at times. But sure, maybe you even have that agreement, but sometimes in practice, it doesn't transpire that way. Players fall to their old habits, and that's just the pace at which they play the game. So I agree that there's that issue, but to me, it's also more of the same in not playing enough default as CT, right? Like on their Inferno, a lot of times, starting with the first gun round, you just play, you just heavily gamble in the mid round instead of going for maybe some information plays. And then if you're wrong, you really can't even go for the retake, and you just concede the round. And sure, you save the guns and you can go into the next one, and your economy is accumulating. Also, the rounds are accumulating for your opponent, right? And in general,
that's why a lot of their games get close. Like, if they have a lead, you sit there, you're like, well, this is going to get close because they're going to save so much.
In general, it's also a little bit deflating for the players.
Yeah, you're not fighting for rounds.
Not to really fight for rounds that much. And another thing that, unfortunately, that hasn't been too much improvement in is some of the mid-rounding.
They don't search out info.
On the T side, right?
Yeah.
On the T side.
So they never have info.
If they take some control, even if they have a man advantage, and then it's a little bit too simple sometimes in terms of the endings, maybe not sending a scout on one side, or at least putting pressure on one side before going to the other, which potentially makes it easier for the CTs to make the correct gamble, right? And
sure.
And not
happened on Dust 2 against Vitality.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. That Anubis game they played against Vitality, they could have won Anubis. I'm not saying they would have. I said they could have won Anubis. They had to battle back hard. They eventually broke Vitality's T-side money, forced them onto a deco. That's the Desert Eagle eco for everybody playing at home. And then 2 guys, Nert's wide swings pop on his own. Con dies. Then NaV goes for the swing to get a kill back, dies. Then Ultimate goes to make a play mid behind the mid smoke because he's like, well, I've just had 2 riflers die. Gets spammed through the smoke, dies.
All right, a bit controversial, right? I don't hate that. The peak from Con.
Just do it, but it needs to be more coordinated.
Well,
there needs to be more to
well,
it.
I
It can't just be a swinger on your own. Why is it like it should be? If he's swinging, Naf's also swinging.
But maybe I think he probably had the first spawn, so he just wanted to go for it.
But
It's
even
like
still,
an M4 against pistols. You know they're going to be on pistols, and sure, there could be a deagle, and he could one dig you.
Yeah.
But just think of it maybe this way, right? If I don't know, you're playing Dust 2 and they're out long, and then now you're going to swing long for the fight. I mean, that's a good fight for the CT. At some point, you have to take fights, even though they're on pistols, right?
Oh, I have no qualm with it, but it wasn't together. I watched it back, right? There's no reason.
I know that it wasn't together. I'm just a little bit.
Even
like,
with the best spawn, Yanko, the second B guy can be right behind that guy. There's not as much of a time delay as what there was. Not only that, if you do something like that, okay, block A with your molly, throw the one that goes to the window, lands outside of A so they can't just run in, play 2 mid, play 3 B. Like, it's a map where it needs to be coordinated. You can't be individual. You're already at a disadvantage because the map doesn't favor the CTs.
I would say, I mean, if we want to get nitpicky on this one round, if I had to imagine what occurred, that particular situation would be Nerds probably just wanted to take a jiggle in 3 shots and fall back.
He fucking wide swung, Jason.
Okay, jiggle might be aggressive, but he did not want to commit to a fight. He just got banged out. And then Naf said, okay, my teammate just died here. The last thing they'll expect is another teammate taking this peak. Let me see if I can just even things up and back away.
And then from there, the game got out of control.
You know how that happens is like that's not communicated from Nerd, so there's no way for Naf to be coordinated with him. I would.
But it should have been coordinated out of spawn.
Yeah.
Like it's just the like those little things they need to be spoken about. Like
I'm not excusing it. I just imagine that's one of those rounds where just someone didn't say what they were going to do, and there was no way to build upon it as a teammate.
I definitely agree with you that in that particular game there were plenty of rounds that Liquid should have won that didn't. But that's exactly the difference between a team that's top 3,
you're the do or you're done.
And contender status, and a team that's not. Like they will in almost every time lose rounds like that because of things that they are lacking, whether it's communication, whether it's protocols, whether it's just players who won't screw up, right, by doing something without saying it or not doing something that they're told and things like that, right? So it's a long list of teams that could have, should have, would have,
yes,
that didn't.
Is this my illness-rattled brain, but didn't Liquid have that, was it the playoff game or something towards the end of groups where they had that Inferno where they had a big lead on the CT side and they kept doing those more gambly, like mode, like they really shifty, and they just like saved like 4 rounds in a row?
Yeah.
Who was that against?
Was it 3D Max?
Maybe?
Yeah. That kind of stuff makes me sad.
Because it's
they're
also...
not in positions to win the round.
But for me, it's also, look at the player, look at their roster. The only inexperienced guy on that team is Ultimate, right? And he seems to be doing pretty fine. So why are you doing it? Why are you not letting guys like NaV, Twists, Nerds, JKS sort of read the game and read the round? Unless I am reading the situation completely wrong and those players, some of them are maybe incapable of playing that way, but I don't get that sense. Just do that and let them sort of figure it out as you. I'm not saying what also maybe people are unaware or don't understand is like when you play default doesn't mean that everything that happens is random that you do or all your reactions are random. You still have reactions. You still have your top banana retake, mid retake, this peak, this app setup, that mid setup, right? But it's just that you let the round develop while you're able to gather more information. And as you gather information, then you make some of these calls, right? And not just decide because you had this read in freeze time, all right, we're going to do this 4 mid setup. Or in the mid round, we're going to rotate the third player B and just play passive B with 3 guys. It's like, why? Okay, you're inviting them because if you don't do stuff on banana, they're like, go for the B, execute. Sure. But what if they have a correct read or they just had this call that they want to go A? You have 2 guys on it. 2 guys cannot defend against 5 players.
No, unless
the best, unless they something fuck up, like the best they can do is get 3 kills. But then you still have a 3v2 retake
winnable
on A, which is winnable for the T's, right? And also asking the 2 A players to get 3 kills is a tall task, right? Against a coordinated hit. So that's why it's just, I could understand it for a younger team, more inexperienced team, lesser team to play that way. Like Heroic did in their time, right?
Sure.
Because individually they didn't have as much firepower as the other team, so they had to do that to even the odds. for themselves. But that shouldn't be the case for this Liquid squad.
But there's a lot of questions about what Liquid do, right? Because there's scrutiny around, okay, well, should Twist be in-game leading, right? And then it's like, okay, well, if you want to not have Twist in-game leading, you obviously want to keep Twist on the team. But then what type of positions does Twist fall into? Does he become like that glue guy like he was on Faze, being able to be a strong role player? Like he was a role player with a lot of output, and he would also help set up players on certain maps. He would be the sidekick to somebody like Rops going aggressive on Inferno. He'd be giving him the boost. He'd be doing the nade setups with him and stuff, right, to try and facilitate. So if you do that, then what type of, like, if you're bringing an in-game leader, well, then who is Twist facilitating? Or is it NAFs or JKS, whoever stays, facilitating Twists? And then you need to get more output out of him, because that's the thing. Twist, unfortunately, is going to suffer from this. We all know it. When you're in-game lead, you're not going to have as much output as an individual. That's just the case. Like, you're seeing it with Brolin, right? He's having some of these games towards the bottom of the scoreboard. You're having to think a lot. What did he say in an interview? Oh, I didn't think it was going to be so hard. It's like, bro, you're having to think about all these things. You're having to think about the economy, your team's buy. If your teammates aren't communicating enough, you have to start coming for them. You got to work out the economy. Who's going to drop guns for who? You're trying to think steps ahead.
Round.
You're trying to think mid-round. You look at your radar. You get swung. You die. Now you're frustrated, but you can't be frustrated because you got to keep looking at the round. You got to keep caught. Doesn't stop. It doesn't stop, right? Like, it's just go
the IGL really does suck. It fucking blows.
And especially as someone who's used to being a fragger and getting to focus on his crosshair, you definitely get to contribute. You get to call things mid-round.
And just had a career rate vitalization out of NIP as well.
Right? So it's tough. It's not easy. But
I appreciate that at least he said it was hard.
Yeah.
I'm glad he didn't just come in and be like, yeah, I've always wanted to do this, and I'm handling business, and I already got a trophy.
Like, fuck all y'all.
Suck my dick.
He's made another final too. Yeah, I don't know. The Liquid one's always going to be curious, because they could fall into that category of making a roster change, but I don't think it's as clear for them on what the roster change should be. Right? People will say JKS, people will say NAF, but I think still then the team's constellation still needs to make sense.
I mean, if I think about this in perspective, and I actually haven't even given it a thought if they were to remove NAF and keep JKS, but in my head, it's always been remove JKS and keep NAF.
That's pretty common consensus, I'd imagine.
Well, I mean, part of it is not even anything gameplay related. It's just NAF's been there for fucking ever, and he's been such a,
household name.
Yeah. But I think if you're going to do that, you have to get a very good, strong anchor and put NAF in more of his rotating roles. I think
you can't though. You need to think about this. You can't do that with NAF. If you have twists, because if you have twists and you have if you have twists and you have nerds, they fill those positions.
This is my point though. But if you get an IGL, then you basically tell Twist that then I almost feel like you have to put Twist back in anchor positions.
But your IGL is not going to be your hard anchor on ramp, for example.
Well, you put NAF back there.
Yeah, but you just were talking about rotating roles. Ramp's only a rotating role when you need to drop under.
He likes ramp because he doesn't
mobility.
have to be ramp at all times, right? He can go secret, he can go outside, he can leave ramp. Sometimes the upper takes ramp. Like, it's an anchor position, but not like Pit Inferno,
Sure. Yeah. But then you've got to think who's going to take long. Okay, do you give that to the in-game leader? What in-game leader do you get? Do you get Shui?
Yeah, I mean,
or Hooksy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right. There's no easy decisions at the moment for Liquid.
Yeah, right. Like, I think that the conversation is them having role problems. The conversation from the beginning was them having too many passive players.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can see them mitigating against that. You can see JKS making plays. You can see Twist when he is having the games where he's feeling it, making plays. Twist, when he gets mad and shit's not working, he makes daddy dick moves. Like, he's running in like with the Mac 10, getting a multi-kill, winning the round. Like, he does it. He can definitely do it. Yeah. So this is like, are they just missing the breakthrough big game against a good team that'll make things click and give them the confidence, or are the problems deeper than that? Because you can live in a world where both things exist. Because Yanko's bang on. They have a lot of experience within this team, right? Is their approach to the game the problem? Is it lack of win for confidence, or is it fundamentally flawed?
I think they might need to think about getting. I want to see them get someone who can be like a buddy paired up with Nerds,
that should be Twist,
like a battle. I know, but as an IGL, it is.
So I know what makes it look a little bit sexy sometimes on T side. You know? Yard outside, Nerds and Twist behind them.
I think if you were to look like at certain maps, you could see areas on the maps where they have good things.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it, because I feel like there are maps where I see Nerds just like kind of die on aggressive plays, very, very solo. I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of players. Yeah, I don't know. It's just repeating. It's repeating what we've already said. I feel like there's not a lot of players. Like if Nerds goes down, or if they're in a 4v5, I feel like they kind of just sit and wait for a minute and then just choose a bomb site to execute on.
I think that's map dependent. I think on some of the maps that
so maybe
I
it is
see
a
them
map
make
pool
plays.
issue. Yeah.
Right. Look, mate. As someone who played with Justin for years, I'm keeping my eyes on him like a hawk, and he's making more aggressive moves than he's ever had to in his life. I see it. Like, he goes. Like, they lose banana control Inferno. It's like, we have to make a play out mid. He goes. He takes the space. He looks for the fight. Like, he's not just sitting there doing nothing. There might be certain situations where a player would go more aggressive than he does, but he definitely is making plays. And the problem is, I can't fucking say this because it's just like, well, this guy is just fucking defends him. He's his friend. It's like, well, I'm also harsher on him and more Australians than anybody.
Yeah.
Right. And I want him to succeed. I'll be honest. I would like him to do well. I would prefer him to do well than do poorly because I like him. But if I sat there and I think he's not initiating, he's not doing anything, it doesn't look like he's adding anything, it doesn't look like he's trying to evolve, then I would shit on him. But I can clearly see in his game and what he's being asked to do that he is trying to live up to those things that are being asked of him. And when you watch the game, you look at certain areas here and you can see the team just like misses the little details. Like you can see a flash gets called and then maybe it's a miscommunication on the boom and then they step out and it's a flash in front of him and the guy gets team flashed. Or like the stagnation of the team in a mid round when we're talking about the 4v5s or the 5v4s in their favor or even the 4v4s. Whose job is that? That's the in-game leader's job to call you're going to go out here and take this space and do this, right? So does that then fall on, like, are we looking at NaF and JKS and going, well, you guys need to make that play now? Well, no, when a round freezes, you guys talk about it and you need to work out in that moment how you're going to approach for information. And then if you get the information, how do we then proceed? So the problems for them aren't one player or one thing. I think it's a lot of things and those things all need tightening up. And whether or not this team can be good, for them, I think if they can break in and be a top 10 team, that's probably the best we're going to see.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
They had the issue that they've had last season too, where they are unable to beat the top 5 teams. You know,
they beat EF. That's the biggest win.
They can beat teams below them, but not teams above them. And sure, EF, but you know, I'm thinking a little bit more. Your Vitality, Spirit, NaVi, even though they're struggling at the moment, Faze potentially, right? Like all these teams that are always in the conversation when it comes to deep runs and trophies. So maybe that's like the glass ceiling they need to break through, right? And
is this better or worse than the one with Yakinda?
Better.
Okay, so that means, because the one before Yakinda, well, there's been a lot of iterations with Yakinda, but we had like the Patsy one.
And we did have the Patsy and Rainwaker, yeah.
Was OC there then?
No.
Who was AWPing if OC wasn't?
Yes, he was.
Must have been OC, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
So there's been a lot of bad liquid rosters, right? Like there's been a lot that haven't really...
They haven't stuck the landing out of COVID quite yet.
No. So what we're talking about here is a team that is better than those versions, but still not at the point to be where they want to be as an org. And that's why I'm saying, is it just a matter of them getting a big breakthrough win and finding the confidence to be approaching the game with a bit more zest?
I think a confidence win would help them, but I don't think it's going to increase their ceiling to any crazy level.
But look at it this way, right? You have a proven winner in Twist. You have a proven winner in JKS with G2 and Faze as a standard. You have a proven winner in NaF in terms of the Grand Slam with Liquid. You have Nerds who feels like he's a winner too, you know, like plays like it. And you have Ultimate who, you know, doesn't suck at the very least. You know, he's young, he's gaining experience. He's had some very good games, had some inconsistency too. Like
That's
he can probably, it looks like he can also be a part of a winning team in that sense. So where's the problem?
Exactly.
Right?
It's the role classes.
Some of the intangibles and the organization and that stuff is like where they still have to figure it out. Because on paper, the tools
could it be team culture?
It very well could be, but I think that was part of. I feel like that was part of the reason of Twist, like kind of taking over the in-game leadership, was he wanted to institute his kind of culture as well.
Well, this is the thing, right? The Cadian fiasco started with them going on a boot camp, giving each other massages, singing "Kumbaya" around the fire.
Yeah.
Right. But I look at that team and I feel you got a lot of like hermits.
They need to get into the octagon.
I don't feel like they have like this is the atmosphere of vitality is brought by Apex and Flamesy.
Yeah.
Right. And then probably Zywoo is the third guy to that, and then like you get the more quiet guys.
They don't have a positive like emotion energy guy.
No.
Which was always what Stewie was.
That could be Nerds.
That's such a crazy
Could be
sentence.
Nerds, but like again, this is the issue Stewie had as well. I mean, not to like make a direct comparison.
You can't do it on your own.
Yeah, you just get exhausted eventually. Nerds coming into a new team, probably that's a tough situation to become that guy. But yeah, there's certainly an essence of that kind of team cohesion that comes with that kind of a positive attitude and environment that's not there.
How do you build that? Honesty, openness, and communication. That was a rhetorical question, motherfuckers. And unless they start doing that, this Liquid roster ain't going anywhere. Get in a room together, boys. Leave your phones outside. Forget about bringing your girlfriends to events. Right here, right now is where you bond as a unit. You come together and you have fun and love for the game. You talk about the things that are hard. You talk about the things that you don't like. You talk about the problems that you're having within the match. And you bond as a unit, Jason. You come closer than you ever have before.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, thanks.
Reach out your hand and touch God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they have the personality for. I'm sure they have conversations.
No, I don't think they have the
Yeah, they
personality
just
for
don't
it
have the
either,
personalities for it. Like, I mean, they'll have the open and tough conversations about the game stuff, but I think outside of the game stuff, they don't have the personality to be like the tight nip. Like, let's get together, hang out, tell jokes and shit.
I think we've been going for a good amount. But I guess I want to end it with kind of.
What's
We
a good
talked
amount?
about who could. It's an hour, 10 minutes.
Hour 10.
That ain't bad.
So could we talk about who potentially makes a roster change or whatnot. Does NaVi need to make one? Where do we?
The NaVi one's the hardest because, like, for my mind, it would be like Wonderful actually played the best in the series that they lost against the Mongolz. But like for me, I don't know where the problems for that team are. Obviously, we saw the bickering and then the way that it was explained away, and this happens every game, and it's a competitive environment, or maybe not every game, but it's going to happen. And it's healthy. It means they care, right? That was everything that we heard there. The problem then falls back to the initial issue we had with NaVi. They peaked with the major win in Copenhagen last year. And that was based off of really good team Counter-Strike. And then after that point, they were still playing good base level team Counter-Strike, but every tournament, a different individual or a different pairing would have pop-offs. Like you'd have a big Bit tournament, or you'd have a big JL tournament, or you'd have Imma in a good form, or you'd have Wonderful being consistent on the orb. And that was able to be the difference maker in their matches. Now, like you're having these players arguing in the middle of the game. You're having like JL in the match saying, I fucking hate CS2, fuck this game, right? So right now, the problem... like they're not delivering what they were delivering before, and that's frustrating to the unit. So how do you get players back in form? Is it they're not putting in enough hours? Is it that they're not having fun like they were before? Because before you were an underdog, then you win the major, then the target's on your back, then it kind of simmers down a little bit because you didn't have the good immediate results. You got another little bump in performance, and now you're back in the dumps.
Can I be honest with you? I'm not entirely confident that kind of like hardcore system Counter-Strike without star players can work anymore. I feel like I need to be convinced. Like Navi needs to convince me that can even work. But those guys can
be star players. Like it depends on what caliber of star player we're talking about here. But Bit is a monster. Like, or at least he can be. Like Bit is mechanically a very, very good player.
Yeah, but you're not putting him in the category of star players. Like, I mean,
he's one of the best anchors in the world.
I know, but I'm trying to say I was going to go with like the unreasonable. Yeah, I was going to go with the unreasonable comparison. But like your star players on.
How many Donk and Nikos are there?
Exactly. That's why I know it's unreasonable. But like you don't have that pop-off star who you know is going to likely give you 13 kills per half, 20 some per game.
Yeah, but for me last year after Donk and Nico Gel was the most impactful rifler.
That's
of
true.
The year.
Yeah, he was.
Because he won them the major with some rounds. Some other tournaments, I feel like he had a ton of impact too.
Yep.
And then some of the other ones, it was Bit also including the major Inferno against Faze and whatnot, right? And they're probably close to each other in that regard. It's just like, where are they now?
Yeah.
That's the sort of a big question. And then it is about whether it's they've just fell off in the hours or something, or is it maybe they changed stuff about their game to keep it fresh and they're not used to it, or something along those lines, right? That's what they have to figure out and fast, because they're falling out of that contender conversation.
They're 8th in the VRS right now.
I feel like this is probably very reactionary based off the final, but
I love it.
I feel like Vitality is going to cause like an arms race of picking up just like pure talent.
Yeah, the issue, so like the one that on paper could be fun to see but will never happen because Russia, Ukraine, is like Monacy to NaVi, right? Like
It went out of focus. It's back.
That's
right.
right.
Oh, okay.
Monacy to NaVi.
Yes, he was waving the podcast back. See you guys. It was fun about the last
It's great, Chad. Gonna cut you off now. 3, 2, 1.
Ukraine and Russia. It's like, but it's just
all right, Chad. Channel changer.
I'm making a broad assumption that NaVi will not have a Russian player in their team.
Yeah.
No,
I think you're right.
So whether or not that's the case, I'm sure someone from NaVi can let us know. But if you had Monacy there, then you do have the bona fide superstar. You said a Donk or a Nico. Well, he's not a Donk or a Nico. He's Monacy, right? And then that changes the dialogue. It means that if you don't get a huge Bit game, or you don't get a huge JL game, or you get a Monacy game, and then their contributions across the board is enough.
I know, but I'm kind of like, it could be either Faze or G2 in the case they lose Monacy. But someone surely takes a swing at fucking Simple. I mean, he's there, bro.
Jason,
He's there.
Jason thinks he's done.
I think he's done.
He's there. You can give him a fucking season,
Mate,
man.
he's toast.
You can give the guy who was like 4 times #1 player in the world or 3 times, you can give him a season.
I think he's toast.
Falcons gave him a season.
What?
No, Falcons gave him one.
They gave him a couple of tournaments, or one tournament, but you know he's shown flashes. It's also, bro, that Falcons team. Give me a fucking break.
I was joking.
Whoever you put on that lineup was gonna suffer.
Doomed. It was
right?
doomed.
So
I actually, when Yanko said that, you said that earlier today, that like crisis mode. I thought about it. I thought about Simple coming back into that roster, but I thought about it in the sense of, do you really need to account to have a? This is crazy. I know this is. Do you really need to have a permanent opper? What if you brought Simple in, had him on a rifle, had him on primarily AK-47, and he picks up the op when you guys have the money for it? But in today's game of Counter-Strike, where the economy is always half busted,
Who are you replacing?
Wonderful in this example, but it doesn't have to be. You could put him for another rifler as well.
Well, then you would just have him more. But if you were going to say you were going to keep Wonderful and replace someone else,
No, but that's what I mean. What if you?
he's saying if he replaces Wonderful,
but don't say like we're always going to prioritize you having it op. Play with an AK-47.
I think some teams are like that on certain maps. Like I think if you look at Vitality's, I was not always buying the AWP.
Yeah, but he's the one example of that. Outside of choosing to buy it when you have the money for the op. Yeah. But you know, like, do you need to have someone who's reliant? I mean, you can't have anyone who's that reliant on the AWP, but you could bring him in as a rifler as well.
You need an AWP on Dust 2. Like there's certain maps that you 100% need the AWP, right?
And also Simple's not like other oppers, right? He's also capable of combat topping, and
he's in the Zywood category.
Yeah, in the situation where he just transcends the game, you know, and that's why I'm saying, like, I think people are. I know he's gone through like stuff and, you know, the mental and whatnot and everything, but if he says that he wants to play and he says that he's available to teams to pick him up, I mean, imagine telling someone 2 years ago, like, you could have Simple on your lineup on a free transfer, right? You just have to negotiate like the contract with him on salary. You could have motherfucking Sasha Kostylev on your team.
I don't think he's ever coming back. But also, like, the other thing is, surely, when does his contract end? Because surely his buyout is way too
expensive. Is it soon?
Should be soon, no? I mean, he's been on the bench for a year and a half.
His buyout would be way too expensive to take a risk on, I would imagine.
Well, if I had to guess, it ends like at the end of this year or at the mid-season.
Well,
probably at the end of the year.
Yeah. I don't know. I think like if Monacy goes to Falcons, then you need something at G2. Like, why not?
Maybe some Pius if he wants to go.
Yeah, true. He's over there at Heroic. Yeah, this is the thing. Where I like the spot we're in generally right now in Counter-Strike because the whole conversation finally makes sense.
Yeah, because it's all based around a VRS. That
like we're mid-season,
together,
we're running into the major. We're like, oh, the team started the season good here at this point. How is now the midpoint going to go after this cutoff date? You know, roster changes could happen. Like in general, right now, this was like a fun, healthy Counter-Strike conversation.
And I think one detail about what you said about after the cutoff, the teams make changes there and use the 2 months to prepare for the major. I think it's not just that; it's also you can beat other teams to the punch. Right, like Shui is on the market. Well, you can take him off the market, right? Because some team, there's probably plenty of teams that are be like, okay, let's wait for the major to end, and then we'll see if we need to make any changes. Well, this way you preempt that and sort of get the guy already, so you don't have to worry about competing with someone for him once the major is over.
Yeah. Do you want to shut it down?
Let's shut her down.
All right. Good conversation. We'll probably do some episodes online in the future. I'm still going to be on the road for another 2 weeks.
Yeah,
you're
on that grind.
It's first you, then it's us.
Yeah, so we'll work out and I'm going to be gone from April 8th until Melbourne starts. I won't be able to do anything there.
Yeah,
because I'll be going on a road trip.
Yeah.
And then we make sure we pin a couple of things, right? We need to talk about Pro League going online next year and arena finals, right? So there's some fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
All right.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Peace.